Right. So we can still do the meeting portion just fine, but I can work on that in the background while you guys are going. Alrighty. So yeah, we are live. We are streaming. I guess you can go ahead and admit the folks.
Consumer culture and uses humor as a means to digest painful realities. Her work confronts the contradictions of the American dream, the ever unreliable notion that hard work will lead to upward mobility and economic freedom. Thanks for being here today, and I'm going to give the spotlight to them.
Cool. So will we be checking out my kind of shorter video first? Or should I dive into the live one? Basically, I kind of made a little mini encapsulation of this process that you all can also look back on again after the recorded version or this live version.
I think we're going to watch the video first. So
cool.
So let me get that together so I can share it for you.
Cool. You all are doing well today.
I know. We have a new president.
Oh yeah.
And you know. Oh wait.
Weird.
Just 1 minute.
Sure.
I stand by trying to bring it up.
Cool. I'll show you some of the things we'll be making today while we're waiting.
Bear with me, it's being a little temperamental.
No worries. I mean, I can also just dive straight into it if that's easier, and maybe folks could look at it at the end too.
Yeah, let's go to the end because the sharing is being weird.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the recorded version that I made before is just kind of like one of those really quick step-by-step ones where I don't go into the details, but you can see more close-ups and stuff of all of these steps. So hopefully if we can't get it up now, you can check it out at the end or later on and refer back to it. But yeah, making soap with me. I think one thing I should say off the bat is that it's not necessarily, I'm not necessarily teaching you how to like make soap from scratch, but rather how to use melt and pour soap, which is like a kind of soap that you can buy on like craft supply stores and things like that, and kind of mix it together to make sort of patterns and colors, and put things in molds in ways that are fun. I often you mentioned that I like work sort of with consumer culture. I often make these sort of multiples of lots and lots of objects that almost like are mimic like other kinds of things that you'd see before, like beauty products. Or behind me I have these like ceramic sculptures that I made that are meant to look like bottles. And then in the process of doing that and thinking about multiples, I started just casting a lot. And in that process, I realized that like soap was a really fun way to like just try out making a whole bunch of forms or mixing a whole bunch of colors in a way that was really like not so committal, you know, because if you don't like how whatever it is that you make at home turns out, you can always just melt it down again. So to start off, I'll just go through the kinds of things that you need to like make this happen. What I have right here on the table is like a burner with I have a little pot, and I have this double boiler, which like some of you might have at home, but this makes it really helpful. Basically, I have some boiling water below, and then I put the soap in on top, and it melts down while I'm getting everything else ready. Another way that you can heat up this melt and pour soap is if you cut it up into little bits and like put it in a ceramic cup in the microwave. Just sometimes I'll do it like in 10-second increments, really keeping a close eye on it. You can melt it down that way too, but you just have to pay a lot of attention or else you might make a mess. And then, so I think that maybe the name of the supplier that I shared materials with that I think will be up on the Wanawari website is called Nature's Garden, but you can also order a lot of these things on like larger online sales, like sales places or craft places. So this is melt and pour clear diamond soap, and so it's a kind of a really, really clear soap. But you can also get like kind of fun like aloe vera ones. It's a glycerin soap. And if maybe you can see, it's kind of put into like smaller sections or chunks that you can see here. The other one I have is a more opaque one that's like a shea butter based soap that you can melt and pour down again. And the soap bars that I'm showing you here are kind of taking advantage of what happens when you mix the two together. So like kind of having little floating bits of opaque soap inside of the clear ones. I think that these are like really fun also to like give people as gifts. I know like when I get soap as a gift, I don't necessarily use it like on my body, but I think that you should tell your friends that they should do it, especially if you put stuff in there that is actually like good for skin, which like in some of my work that maybe if you like looked at my website, you might have been like, dude, I really want to learn how to make soap from this person. Because sometimes I just throw like Cheetos and weird stuff in there to see how it turns out. But today I was going to show you some things that are like kind of nice to have on your skin. So these are like rose petals that I just bought online in a supplier too. You can also add in like, this is ground pumice that I got online. This is some activated charcoal, which I don't actually know if it does the thing. I see maybe that there's a chat, but I can't actually read the chats myself. So feel free also while I'm going through all of this just to like interject and ask any questions that you might have for me too. And I'm happy to answer them as we go along. Okay, so you need your soap, you need your double boiler, you need some molds. And so I'm going to show you like what to do with like pre-made molds. This is like a kind of a pseudo hard plastic that you can basically pour into. This is like will help you, like you'll end up with a kind of oval bar of soap with this shape. This one has like more fun ones, like maybe you're making like a fun Valentine's one or something with a heart or a circle. And then there are these ones that are kind of easier to get your soap out of that I often use that are made out of like silicone, so they're pretty mushy. And then hopefully maybe one day I'll be able to share with you all how I make like my own silicone molds where I cast things. So that process is that I'll take like a shape that I like and I'll mush it in some clay and I'll pour the silicone on top, and then I pull it out and I can pour my soap in and get that shape again. But yeah, I think there's like a whole range of pre-made molds already that exist out there that are perfectly fun to use on your own. And so then you'll need like a chopping board, something to cut your soap on. I have this fun tool, which is like a choppy thing that helps me just kind of go right down there and cut it. But, you know, a knife will do too, or like whatever, you know, as long as you just like sort of use it safely. Need some cups to mix things in. Again, I like these silicone ones because like basically you're going to end up with some soap sort of dried on the edges. And so instead of having to scrape it out, like with this kind, you can kind of just like bend it and it pops right out. But again, any cup, any old cup will do. And then these dyes, so these like soap dye, which again, you can buy online at like craft stores and stuff like that. I think there are also a lot of really fun like natural dyes and stuff like that you can buy. And so I'll take you through basically the first step to get to something like this. I usually begin by, or basically I have to begin by taking, this is a bit of the white opaque soap that I showed you. And I just go ahead and I like chop it up into little bits. I find that even though it's like marked off in these square increments, I think that's usually for if you're trying to follow like someone's specific recipe or instructions. But if you're going it alone, I just cut it up into smaller bits because, you know, since we're basically just melting down the soap, the smaller you melt that, the smaller you break it down for yourself ahead of time, the less you have to wait around for it to melt. So once I've got some small pieces, I have some here, if you can see. I go ahead and I add them into my double boiler. Because you all are here with me in real time, I had it kind of going already and melting some white soap. So, but normally this would take a little bit of time, right? So you'd leave it here and get it melted down. I found that the more opaque soaps or the shea butter based soaps also tend to cool off really fast. They take longer to melt and they tend to cool even faster. So that means like once you kind of take it off the boiling water, you want to do your next steps pretty quickly. So my next steps, mixing colors. For me, this is like, I mean, for basically everything in my art, everything's like super improvisational. Like you might want to do lots of tests to get really specific colors that you want. But I'm going to pour this white soap into the mold, and I'm going to actually just add my color straight into the mold and mix it around. This ends up with something a little bit less consistent, like maybe this one that's a bit swirlier. But sometimes I do that just because it's faster. And oftentimes, like I said, the white one cools off quickly. So if you pour it into the cup and then mix the colors in, it might like cool off before you get to actually pour it into the mold. So I usually go ahead and I make just like a ton of these like opaque color bars ahead of time. So I'm going to go ahead now and pour some of my white into a mold. So here's this one, and I'm going to pour it into the square shaped one. You can see mine is still a little bit lumpy, which like you can get away with this. All of these things are like, you know, like this is mostly just because it's like kind of fun and to see what happens. I also, so I'm going to add some red in, and if I put in just a couple drops of this red dye, it'll end up sort of pink. And then I'm mixing it up. And so once you have it mixed, you're just gonna leave it and let it set. This one, the white one's gonna set like pretty fast. But you can also just put it in the fridge, or some people put their molds in an ice bath. and that'll get you hardened faster, and you can kind of keep going faster. Then like I like to use the color, the first initial like opaque colored bits that I make as like a sort of confetti that I put into a mold, and then like I pour clear on top of. So the first thing I want to do while this one is setting is I'm going to go ahead now and I'm just going to chop up my clear soap so that as I'm deciding how I want to lay out my molds, the clear one will be melting away. And as I mentioned, the clear one does melt a little bit faster, which is fun. Are there any questions so far? Cool.
I'm checking the chat, but I don't see any questions yet. Feel free to add questions in the chat or unmute yourself.
Awesome. Yeah, you know, I mean, I think the thing that's nice about this is that it's kind of, there's like a real broad margin for error, so to speak, which I feel like can be a relief in so many ways when we're making things. Did someone chat something now? Sorry, I also took off my glasses so they wouldn't be reflecting, so I'm extra blind.
You got a no questions yet from me, but this is fun. Thanks.
Oh, cool. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you're having fun. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and let my clear melt down a little bit more. You'll often find too, right, that as you have this double boiler here, of course, some of the water's gonna evaporate really fast too, so you might have to keep replenishing it. But yeah, so my sort of like confetti bits that are made out of my pre-poured solid. This is like a pink. This was just like mostly a lot of yellow and then just a dash of red in there with the white or purple. I go ahead and I chop those up into little bits. You can make them like sort of like strips or something like this, and that can be fun. Or just little cubes or whatever strikes your fancy. You actually could cut out, like if you maybe warmed it up a little bit, like you could take out like a cookie cutter perhaps and make like a really distinct shape. That could be really cool too. I haven't like used that much in my own work, but I think like there's something about the layering and the really rapid way you can layer a whole bunch of colors that I find like really fun, you know. I mean, I'm not much of a painter, but I used to be. And, you know, it was that like if you tried to keep working into the painting again and again really fast, you would make it all like muddy and gross. And so I like that with soap, like that tends to not happen as much. So you can really play around with color. So I was just chopping this up and now I have these like little peach pieces. And I'm going to go ahead and put them into this mold. I'm also going to add some things that I chopped up before. So here are some kind of purpley black chunks, and I made these by mixing in the activated charcoal. I don't really know like how that turns out. If you use it, you might end up looking kind of charcoaly or something. But that I don't know, that could be fun too. Also, you can put like pumice into the little bits, etc. So now I have this mold that I'm not going to lean it too far forward, but you can see it has little bits in there. So I'm going to check in on my clear and see if it's melted. Yeah, it's ready. So also it's like I think there is even a like genre of YouTube video that is like watching people cutting soap. And there is something just like super satisfying about that feeling. And also the feeling of like pouring soap. I think it's like the viscosity of it. Did someone say something or sorry?
Yeah. Zola said, is it possible to embed objects if they're made from something that won't melt? Which materials work best? Also, I love how you are making this feel accessible, less intimidating than.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you could put basically anything in there that doesn't melt. I mean, the thing I guess about it is like, depending on how you perceive like utility, right? Which is like, okay, you probably can't put stuff in there that's like an irritant, right? I like to put flowers in but you know, the flower petals are going to kind of, they might feel a little bit exfoliating you, but they're also going to kind of just come off in chunks and end up in your shower, which I am like totally down with. You asking me this though makes me think about like how it could also be like a fun thing with like a prize in there or something. Like, what if you just like made a bar of soap with like an action figure or like a little ceramic item? So I've done that before. And I've put like all kinds of random things in my fake soap bars. Like this one has like car air freshener, which is like kind of gross, but like I just wanted to see again how the layering comes together.
You got another question, which is, which soap is most moisturizing?
I really like the shea butter based ones. I think that one feels really nice. They're all like kind of glycerin-y soaps, so they're not going to be like if you bought like Dove soap or something like super duper natural at the store. But you can also like make your own soap like entirely from scratch. And you can probably up the like oils and things in there that will make it like super duper moisturizing. Here I also have brought it's on a slightly different note, but I also bought some like scented things to add in, scented fragrances and oils. So I'm gonna add a little vanilla into mine actually right now. But yeah, hopefully maybe we can do a demo down the line for like how to just totally make your own natural soaps from start to finish. I found that when I bought like the more moisturizing it is that I've bought online before, the more likely it is to kind of, what can happen sometimes is that when you're just sitting it in your room, if the temperature varies a lot, it can start to get like beads of moisture on the top or kind of get a little melty or mushy, which like to me isn't the end of the world. But it basically like it can be like less like shelf stable if it's made like more out of more like moisturizing things. But again, then you just use it faster. Did that answer? All right. So I have my clear.
It probably did.
Cool. And it smells really good too. There are little chunks of white that were still remaining inside of the pot. So this is going to be like pseudo opaque, sort of like how it looks in this one. But I'm just going to go ahead and pour it in. And so now I'm going to let this one set too. And you can kind of look at the bottom to see how your little bits are settling if you want. You can also like add dye into your clear soap, of course, too, which can be really nice, you know, get a kind of an ambery thing or a little like translucent aqua situation happening. And I find that with the clear, it is much easier to just mix it up in one of these cups. You'll see like in some of the ones I have here, like this one, it's like kind of multi-layered in terms of the colors, or this one. And I did that by pouring something like this and then just letting it set completely. And then going back in and pouring on another layer of color, as like you might imagine. And then you could do that in like tons of little thin strips and have almost like, you could make like a cool like rainbow striped bar of soap or something like that too, which could be super fun. If I like go ahead, this is not completely melted yet, but for time's sake, I'm pouring my clear into this little cup. And I'm gonna add just like a dash of green. This is like, I got these littler ones from like this kind of big set of lots of really specific colors. I got it from, I think it came from Amazon before, so I'm not really vibing with them so much anymore. But so that's why I've been using kind of straight from soap retailers, where I just kind of mix my, you know, primary colors and get what I want that way. Add my green glue pen. And I'm gonna wait for my translucent green to set too. And so after it cools off, you're there. This is like basically it. I'll show you another example. With this one, I sprinkled the pumice stone at the bottom, and then I poured the soap on top, and then I got something that's more like kind of exfoliating, which is cool too. But you'll see some pictures of like the range of things that I made in the shorter video that I prepared for you all too. But basically that's it. That's kind of how you make a cast bar of soap for your friends and family and for yourself, or for no one at all. Are there any other questions?
See.
I hope that means I explained it well.
You're getting a lot of thank you, Alex.
Oh.
Thanks for doing this. Lots of people saying thank you.
Oh, thank you for coming.
Wait. Does cooled glycerin soap work for making confetti?
So like kind of the soap that I just used, the translucent soap, does that work for making the smaller pieces? Is that the question?
Haas at eBiblio, do you want to unmute yourself? Might be easier if you ask it yourself.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, thank you so much. I was wondering, thank you so much for this. And I was just wondering if it works so you'd end up with a clear confetti or clear strips in clear soap. Like, would that work? Or does it have to be the opaque? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would work. It might melt together a little bit more, you know, because they're of a similar consistency. One thing I could think of that you could do to get the chunks to stay like a little bit better would be if you like kind of put them in the freezer so they were super cold when you poured another layer of translucent on top. And then I think that they would be less likely to like fully melt and like integrate into your clear. If that makes sense.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, because you're saying that the glycerin soap is melts more easily. And I was just wondering, I was wondering if I could make clear, like the translucent, kind of like stained glass, almost like little translucent chunks, and then put it in the totally clear soap, or maybe even a color or something like that.
Yeah, I think you could totally do that. I think you should, once you make the little chunks of the clear, like put them in the freezer first and make sure they're super cold before you pour your clear layer on top. And I think if you do that, they'll be less likely to like melt when you fully melt, and they'll probably keep their shape if you have them super cold before you pour the hot soap on top.
Thank you for that great tip. I would not, thank you. I would not have thought of that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, you know, if it goes wrong, you could just melt down again.
Any more questions?
Okay.
Great.
Cool. Thank you.
Have a great Saturday, and we'll see you later. And Ilana, I'll let you hang out with me for a little while longer.
Cool.